Poppy.
Huh. You know, I just noticed something with that little countdown timer thing.
What?
It mutes us when it's going automatically on its own.
It does. I tried talking to you yesterday and then realized that I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, what's going on, guys? What's happening? We're sorry we missed you guys yesterday. We had our adult stuff going on and we tried to get on in the evening after everything was done, but kids and the adulthood wasn't allowing us to do so. So we ended up skipping, but we're here today. We are here today. Alex, what are we talking about?
Man, we are going to be talking about something that I think that we are super qualified to talk about, which is why the military is having recruiting problems and a retention crisis. And as we are both successful recruiters for almost a decade, and man, oh man, this is going to be a good one because we could talk for days about this.
We really can, man. So as you guys know, like Alex was just saying, we were recruiters for a good amount of time. We recruited for the Army National Guard, and we processed a lot of people together. We probably enlisted close to 200 people, I would say, and that's a lot of people to be putting in. I mean, that's a battalion worth of people. It's a lot of people.
Yeah. And it was fun. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it, but give me a good one today. Give me a doozy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, go ahead, kick us off. This is one of Alex's favorite subjects.
It is. It is. Yeah, and as a former recruiter, actually, I quit recruiting to go full time with YouTube about a year ago, and I've been loving it. But we already have somebody that asked a comment real quick. Juan Rodriguez. I said that almost the same. As a medic who's dealt with hundreds of separation physicals, I have some insight on why Marines, sailors are leaving on their first contract. Curious to see what y'all have to say. Well, we're gonna get way into that one. So I don't know. Juan commented on this before we went live. And we're gonna dive real far into that one. So why don't we come right back to that in a few minutes? But so the reason why we're talking about this is every branch of the military missed their recruiting goals last year. The Army missed it by 25%. And the Marines, I think, tried to say that they made it, but they fudged their numbers and lowered what they were originally trying to recruit for. Basically, long story short, everybody struggled last year. And then on top of that, because they weren't bringing enough people in, they can't plug the hole of all the people that are getting out. They can't keep people in. They can't retain their talent, and they can't replace them fast enough with new recruits, which is a problem. And it looks like they're even at a bigger disadvantage running into 2023. So I know when Philip and I were recruiting, our numbers were usually like 12 to 15 per year.
Correct.
For how many people we had to recruit. And then like the guys that came before us at the height of like the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, they had to put in like 18 to 24 people a year. So, what are the teams looking at now, at least in Oregon? Didn't you tell me it was like 6 to 8?
Yeah, for this year, for this recruiting year, which if you guys didn't know, typically the recruiting years start October 1st and then they end September 30th. And that's the way that the Army's physical years work. And that's how they mission their recruiting numbers. So it's typically a quota of how many people that you need to list within that period of time. And that's how they do it for the Army National Guard.
Oh, and speaking of which, for this video today, I thought this would be the appropriate mug to drink my coffee out of.
Yeah, it's a good cup. Really, it is. So Blaze says he's been watching our moving out video with $1,000. What's going on, Blaze? Glad. Hopefully you like the video. You do got to get started on that stuff, man. Being an adult, it's great. Got to do it, man. It's so rewarding once you finally get out. I remember I moved out without a job, but I had money in the bank, and I was like, I'm gonna figure it out. Sent it, and haven't had to move back in. A lot of pride there with that. and being able to like never been evicted, all that type of cool stuff. So it's good. Get at it.
Yeah. And to be honest, like before we jump into like all the stuff that the military is doing wrong right now, as recruiters, and beyond just being recruiters, as soldiers, the military did a lot of good. It made moving out a lot easier, whether it was bonus money or that little bit of extra money because we were, in the National Guard and paying for college, using it for my VA home loan. The military has done a lot of good for my life, but I also understand I'm not so one-sided that I can look at the full picture and see all the stuff that's going wrong right now and why people don't want to join the military currently. Like I'm not blinded to the truth. I'm not so far deep in the Army that I can't understand like why things are going wrong. I'm not some top level general that has their blinders on and they're trying to feed you all this propaganda. We're here to tell you the truth. So what were you gonna say?
Yeah. So the military, right? When we originally joined, for Alex, it was what, 2004 when you joined?
3, man. I'm a dinosaur. I'm about to hit my 20 years.
Yeah. When he joined in 2003, when I joined in 2006, the military was completely different than what it is now. We didn't have like females in combat arms jobs, which are like your infantry positions, your field artillery, your tanks, all of that type of stuff. Those the females were only allowed to do like the human resources,
support,
which is your data entry support positions, right? So military was substantially different. And then, of course, it changes. The military evolves and it grows and expands and does things differently, which a lot of things are good changes. We don't have anything against women being in the combat arms. When I was deployed, I had a female gunner in Iraq. She was awesome. She'd kick you in the face. She was a ninja. She operated the machine gun, carried it around, did everything that you needed her to do. She did a great job. So I don't care if they're females in combat roles or not. As long as they can do the job, I'm cool with it. But that is a big change that we had experienced during our time in the military. We went through 4 different presidents, 5 different presidents. Bush, Obama,
Trump,
Biden. Yeah.
That's been wildly different from presidency to presidency. And you can see how those changes take effect from being in the military, whether you have tons of funding or almost no funding for schooling, especially in the National Guard. But the
Womp says
Army recruiting sucks.
Yeah.
So, but really just trying to like, I guess, be focused with this. When I think about different presidents, we've pretty much been at war the entire time. It doesn't matter if they're conservative, Republican, or if they're Democrat. We're pretty much always at war. I think the only one that tried to like get us out of wars was Trump and not into any new conflicts. But ultimately, we've been at war the entire time that I've been serving. It's been almost 20 years, 2 decades of being at war. So that right off the bat, I think people are tired of that, right? If you join, you pretty much are expected to go on some kind of deployment. And after 20 years of deployments, public perception isn't always going to be the best of the military, right? It's not like you just join and then you go to college and you use these great benefits and it's sunshine and rainbows. No, it's a pretty high deployment cycle, and deployment cycles can wear people down. They can be hard on relationships, hard on your family. It's hard to go to school consistently and knock out your goals or whatever it is you're trying to do if you're constantly getting deployed back to back.
Yeah. I mean, and additionally on top of that, I mean, not only is the tempo, right, which is what we were kind of talking about, the rate at which you guys do trainings and deployments, that's called a tempo. The tempo has been high. It's been high for quite a while, which is a problem, which is what Alex was talking about. Mm-hmm. But additionally, the environment is not necessarily the greatest. It can be great, but unfortunately, more times than not, it's not necessarily the greatest environment due to your leadership. And we use that term loosely because unfortunately, a lot of the leadership, the quality leadership in the military has died. And this goes to the comment that Juan was talking about earlier, like why are people getting out on their first contract? And this is due to leadership in part. I know a lot of it. I have a lot of good buddies that have been in the Marine Corps, and And they always say the one common thing, which is they love the Marines. They love being a Marine, but they hated the Marine Corps. And this was just due to silly games that they like to play when they were on active duty. And a lot of people, they just don't like to be treated that way overall, whether it's having to show up last minute for silly stuff or just getting treated like your dog water. There's a lot of different things that go into that, being forced to do things you're not wanting to do, so on and so forth. And then you add on the stuff that Alex was talking about with the deployment tempo and all that. It's a lot. You're like, yeah, I'll go work at Chipotle. They offer the same benefits. I'll just do that.
Yeah.
And their pico is good. So
the leadership, it always boggles my mind when people are like, oh, the military, you go there to learn all these great leadership skills. Yeah, where are those people at? They're far and few in between that are good leaders in the military. Most of them are highly toxic and they suck at leadership. And then you do find a few good ones. And the good ones, what they did was they saw all the bad leaders and they said, I'm never going to be like that person because that person is a piece of crap. And then they did the opposite. And they typically, the good ones, focus on taking care of soldiers, not playing stupid games and making your life miserable. They focus on getting the job done and taking care of you as an individual because they actually care about other humans. And those are the good ones, but they're not common. And that's the hard part. And those are the ones you want to latch onto and find them and use them as mentors and figure out how to improve yourself the most, because the Army leadership training that you get, it ain't that great, right? And it's a lot of just words, but leadership isn't about words, it's about actions. And so most of these actions that these leaders take are not good ones. So that, pretty much, but that's nothing new. That's been around for decades. And like you said, most Marines love being Marine, but they hated the Marine Corps. That's pretty much service-wide. So, let's see here. Womp says, I was in for 12 years, 4 deployments. It's way too much, which that's hard on anybody.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to stay because leaders are trash. Just because they've been there the longest doesn't mean they should be leaders. And, I couldn't agree more. There's some people that they just stick it out and everybody else gets out and they're still around and they get promoted. But,
this next comment that old Wompy put down on here, at least you got to serve with one of the best NCOs on the planet. Before you dropped that comment, I was like, I feel like I know who Womp is. What's up, Son Thompson? Miss you. He's in Arizona now. I saw his parents in the airport last time I was leaving your house. Send him a text message.
That's so funny.
Yeah. This is actually the button I meant to hit. Blaze, appreciate that comment. Oh wait, no, that's not a comment. No, that is the comment. Might have clicked the wrong one. But yeah, no, do appreciate this comment. Thanks for that. Glad to have you here watching with us. And then Savvy, we will let you know once we get that course ready. If Alex will hurry up and finish a couple of those transcripts, or excuse me, the modules, lessons, whatever, we can get that thing moving. Yeah.
Yeah. Believe me, working on it.
It is a lot of work. You guys would never really understand how much work it took or it takes to develop something like that. It has been a process, such a long process, so much more work than we had ever thought it would be. But it's going to be great when it is done. So make sure you guys do check it out.
All right. So jump back on track. We got, I was reading earlier, 3 out of 4 people who try to join right now, going back to the recruiting problem, 3 out of 4 people who try to join have to have some kind of waiver, right? So that means 1 out of 4 actually meet the military standards, right? You got to be pretty much like Captain America nowadays to be like the perfect person to get in, because gone are the days where you could just lie and not tell a medical doctor what your history was. Now they have a program called Genesis that looks up all your medical history from the time you're a kid, and there's no hiding anything. And people used to lie to get in since before I joined, right? I've been in for almost 20 years and they didn't have, they never did this or that or whatever. So that's a huge barrier, because now pretty much everybody has to have some kind of waiver or they're just totally disqualified. And I think that's going to compound the problem. And then I was also reading like 57% of people, this is according to a Department of Defense survey. Where is it at? 57% of people. Oh, I can't find it. 57% of people 18 to 24 who were asked about joining the military said that they're worried about having some kind of emotional or psychological problems after serving. And half of them said that they were worried about having some kind of physical problems after serving. So, I think that's pretty founded based on how many homeless vets you see, that obviously have psychological problems, or just vets in general that have PTSD issues or injuries. And then that things like, it's always in the news, how the VA isn't taking care of people medically and they're having all these problems. So after reading about that for so long, maybe not Gen Z, but their parents or their aunts or uncles, like I'm old enough now to pretty much have Gen Z kids or pretty close to, like, or people that I served with that are a little bit older than me, if they have any of those kinds of issues, they saw any of that kind of stuff happening, why do you think they're not recommending people to join?
Yeah.
And one of the statistics that we've been told since recruiting school is 80% of people who enlist because they either knew somebody who served or their parents or siblings served. So if they're having any of those kinds of struggles, they're probably, if you look at any forums or any of the comment sections on like YouTube or anything, they're actively telling people don't do it.
Yeah. We would be recruiting people and they would come into our office. And one of the reasons why they would want to join was because their grandparents had served or their parents had served and they wanted to continue the legacy. And a lot of people came to the military for that exact reason, like the honor, duty, or or, continuing the legacy of serving. And now with the people that are getting out of the military or the people that had served and they're like, don't do it because they're not going to take care of you after you get out, or the environment is toxic, or it's changed. It's not what it used to be. These are all things that they're telling these grandkids or their kids, and it's causing people not to want to come into the service. And I mean, and it's reasonable and understandable. Like if we weren't on our way out due to retirement, for Alex, and then I only have 4 years left, which goes by substantially fast in the military, then we would definitely be. We were like, no, it was cool, it was fun, thanks, we're gonna go now. And unfortunately, with a lot of the good quality leadership that we were talking about earlier, that's what a lot of them do. The good ones don't stick around because they get out and they're like, I can go do something better. And
you're left with whatever is left over.
Yeah, which is typically the people that can't make it out in the real world.
So going back to what you're saying, like my grandpa served in the Navy, my dad served in the Navy. I chose to go in the Army National Guard because I wanted to drive tanks and I didn't want to deal with all the stuff that we're talking about full time, the bad leadership and all that stuff, where if you're active duty, you can't get away from it. You're constantly around it. Whereas in the National Guard, if you do have bad leaders and you have to do stupid games or whatever, it's only for a weekend and then you go back to your regular life. So that is part of why I went part-time compared to full-time, is my dad and my grandpa both told me about all the stupidity that goes along with being active duty. And unfortunately, that's still the exact same way today. And I think that's part of the game of, embracing suck the suck, or embrace the suck. And it does suck to suck, but you go through that together. But I didn't really want to do that full-time until I went full-time with recruiting, about a decade ago. But initially, that's why I went part-time. So, all right. Getting back into it, as far as some of these other things, right? People are going to be concerned about going on deployments like we were talking about, in Iraq and Afghanistan. While those deployments are over, you've got the news that are constantly fear-mongering, telling people that we're going to go to war with North Korea or China or Iran, Russia, whatever it is. There's always some kind of fear-mongering going on, and people are scared to join because they don't want to go to those places. Are we actually going to go to war with any of them? Who knows? I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know that all the talking heads, that are constantly trying to sell you fear, make it so that kids don't want to join, or so the parents don't want the kids to join because they're worried they're going to get deployed to those places.
Yeah. I mean, when we both joined, it was during the height of the Iraq-Afghanistan conflict. And that was obviously concern of ours that we were worried about. And surely we joined and got kicked out the door. But
yeah, 2 months after getting back from training,
we were lucky enough to stay normalish for the most part, right? But I mean, that is a worry,
I
and
think
it's
so.
always been a worry, and it's been a worry to the people that were coming into our offices trying to join the military. That was always a concern. Literally every single person that asked that, and it's a reasonable,
Yep.
understandable thing to ask. And we would always tell them that, look, if you do a 6-year contract, which was the typical contract length in the National Guard, we would always say, like, you can expect to do 1 deployment at least at minimum, and that deployment would be, it could be a combat deployment, it could be a security deployment, it could be a deployment to where you just go to another country and train another country's military. It could be anything. The deployment it's a
Could be a
term
stateside deployment.
yeah, a deployment is a term that's used very loosely in the military. It can mean a lot of different things. It essentially means that you're just leaving your home for more than 30 days. That's what a deployment means. And it could be combat. It could be, peacekeeping. It could be training another military. It's a lot of different things.
So with that being said, you can pretty much, and we worked together. Philip and I worked together out of the same office, and we were a team. And you can guaranteed get deployed, at least in the National Guard, at least once, whether that's stateside or abroad. And usually we recruited for Oregon. It was like forest fires or maybe some kind of flood. And those were like the main issues that they had there. Whereas other states, they might have to deal more with like hurricanes and tornadoes and that kind of stuff, or the border security, whatnot. That op tempo has ramped up significantly since 2020. And with COVID, it's no longer just, oh, you're going to get deployed for going and helping out with a natural disaster, which is what the National Guard has always talked about, being used to help in your communities and this and that. Well, then they took that and they really tweaked it. And I think depending on what side of the belief system you're on, whether you're more of a conservative or liberal in your thinkings or whatever it is. So, like Philip, you went on a COVID mission to help distribute PPE, the protective equipment, all over the state for how long was that? Like 2-3 months back in 2020?
Yeah. I think it was like 4 months. Yeah.
So you did that. A lot of soldiers were used to help administer the vaccines or whatever it was to help out in that capacity, right? And some people loved it, some people hated it. Whether they truly believed in it or not, whatever. That's still part of like under the banner of like helping out in your community. But then the different states took it a lot further, and after the COVID mandated policies for different states and government facilities, a lot of people quit. So you had a massive amount of hospitals lose staff. And so then they called the National Guard to help fill those shortages, right? And they weren't doing anything other than like maybe some patient administration stuff or wheeling patients around and helping out.
Yeah, they're doing janitorial stuff, playing the piano in the foyer, just random stuff. You'd be like,
it sounds great in theory that the military is there to help out in the hospitals, but what are they actually doing?
Yeah. And one of the things that I kind of thought was ridiculous was like when they had the Guard at the unemployment centers answering those telecom centers or whatever, and they were answering those. I was like, woo!
Yeah. There's your sense of pride and purpose.
You're a telephone operator.
Or like you had a lot of prison guards that quit, right? Because they didn't want to get the vaccine. So what did you end up doing? Oh, you got deployed within your own state to go work at a prison that other people didn't want to work at. And so you're propping up all these state entities that really essentially did it to themselves, right? And so whether you believed in it or not, you still had to go do it. And typically it was on short notice. It's within like 72 hours. They're like, hey, pack your bags. You're going to whatever location to help out within the state. Great. Yeah. Okay. Well, unfortunately, none of that time when you're in the National Guard anyways, converts over to like federal benefits. You get paid, but that's about it. You get paid a decent amount from state funds, but you don't actually continue to get all this time allotted towards your federal service because that's not what it's counted towards. So if you want to use more benefits, like have a higher paying GI Bill for college or whatever, it doesn't count towards that, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
I guess
I mean that was a problem for sure, absolutely. And I mean, and now it's the backlash of that problem is kind of carrying on. Like, oh, well, I'm not going to join the guard because they have to go do all this silly stuff. You're not even you joined to do this job, and now you're not doing this job. You're doing something else that's completely outside of the scope of those job duties. So that is a problem.
Well, and I was just talking to a guy last month who they got back. He's military police. They got back from a year-long deployment. He was home for a month, and then they got called up to do the COVID mission for a year here in Arizona. And so back to back, I mean, he might have been home, but he wasn't with his family. And so after that, back to back, he's like, dude, I'm done. I'm getting out. Like, he's an E6. He's been in for 12 years. He had enough. And stuff like that, that's going to make it harder to keep people in. So you have those high deployment tempos, whether it's here at home or if you're active duty, they have a lot higher deployment tempo than the National Guard does. And so that makes it hard to keep people in. And then I guess let's just dive right into it. They're kicking people out with the mandated COVID policies, right? So they kicked out, I think, service-wide around 5,000 people. And then in the National Guard, they've got, and reserves combined, the numbers are roughly anywhere between 40,000 and 100,000 troops that either refused to take the vaccine or they requested a religious exemption. And ultimately, all those have been denied for the most part. I mean, they haven't all been denied. Any COVID COVID religious exemptions have pretty much been denied. Hardly any have been approved. So they're just waiting for those exemptions. You got 40 to 100,000 people that just haven't been kicked out yet because their exemptions haven't been denied. So you're having trouble keeping people in, you're having trouble recruiting people. And then on top of that, you're kicking people out that are perfectly healthy people. So you see how the military is treating their own people. You see, I mean, a lot of people see the COVID stuff as like a political issue, and the military is not supposed to be political. It's supposed to be apolitical. And unfortunately, with the COVID stuff, it depends on your beliefs about all that. But like, they're not bad people just because they didn't want to get a vaccine. They love their country. They've most likely gone on some kind of deployments to serve their country, and they made their own medical choice. And yet they're being kicked out, or they're in a pending status where they're about to be kicked out. Like in the National Guard, if they haven't got their vaccine, they're in a no drill, no pay status. So they can't even come to drill. They don't get any benefits, nothing like that. And I think that's another layer that's just making it worse for public perception going forward. And that's a giant black eye for the military, because they're kicking out so many of their own people based on what a lot of people see is like a left or right policy. Because I know the Republicans are trying to act like, this shouldn't be happening. They need to all get reinstated, whatever. I don't know how the left is looking at it anymore, but originally, it was a very hard line of like, no, these people need to be fired or quit your job if you don't want to get the vaccines or whatever it was. But it's a big black eye layered on top of all the other stuff we're talking about of why people are getting out, and it's really hard to plug that hole.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, a lot of time in history, military has been used as like the social experiment to kind of figure out, how people will respond. And obviously, that's just an opinion of my own, right? It's not.
Oh no, dude, that's fact.
Anywhere, but
yeah. Well, before we ever got rid of segregation, they got rid of it in the military in small units first to see how that would all play out. I mean, they've done it time and time again. So you're absolutely right as far as historically speaking. We typically use the military as a little test pool, figure out, hey, how is this going to work out? And if it works, or if it doesn't, if it's a dramatic failure, then they don't implement it. But the military has absolutely been tested on for, stuff like that, at least for the last 100 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then so all of the stuff that Alex was talking about, and then the military is just kind of making its shift with the wokeness, right? And depending on whatever side of the spectrum you're on, that's fine. We don't care. But regardless of what side you guys are on, it is affecting the recruiting efforts. If you guys wanted to use an example of the Army's most recent recruiting commercial, that got so much flack, and we don't have a live video of it, but it was essentially the one where it was animated, cartoony, and it was, two moms and a daughter, and they were like, I want to be like mom. And that was pretty much it in summary, which is, great. But it got so much hate on social media.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
They turned the comment section off because people were blowing it up so bad.
Yeah. And, like there was a brief talk for a little bit of like, oh, pronouns, we need to use pronouns in the military. Like, no, we don't, because private, sergeant, gunny, right, captain, major,
right,
whatever, lieutenant, those are gender neutral. Like, they get kind of ridiculous with it, and the military doesn't care about that type of stuff. We're there to do a job. We want to help people, and it's just not the environment, I would say, for that, and it's showing because it's doing horribly.
All right, I did horribly. You got General Milley that did his thing about, he went in front of Congress. General Milley is the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's the top general for all the military. And he went in front of Congress and was talking about, or he was defending the military doing critical race theory and talking about white rage and all this stuff. And it further emphasized the military embracing wokeism or wokeness or whatever you want to call it. And a lot of people hate that. And I think that's another further thing that's just going to divide people who might have thought about wanting to join the military, but then they see that and they're like, yeah, nope, I don't want anything to do with that. Versus the military being apolitical like they're supposed to be, not being woke, not having any of this other stuff that's going to divide, right? And not letting politics get in the way. And unfortunately, like everything else in the world, the military is super divided, just like regular society, because we're all part of regular society, right? We come from every walk of life, and people can join the military. It doesn't matter if you're poor or you're rich. We all, when we go to basic training for dudes, you get your head shaved, you get the same uniform, you scrub the same toilets. Nobody's better than each other. And that's a great part of camaraderie, right? And you're put in this small bubble at basic training where you all have to go through the same crappy environment, the same struggles. But the difference in that and like a regular job is you can't just go home and get away from people. Like the hardest part about basic training isn't the drill sergeants or the drill instructors and the physical fitness or the food. The hardest part is being surrounded by people that some of them you like, but a lot of them you don't like.
Right.
But you can't get away from them. You have to eat together. You have to train together. You have to go back to the barracks and sleep in the same place together. Like you have
punished for them being ridiculous.
Oh yeah, the dumber they are, the more punishment you get. But ultimately, you have to learn how to work together as a team and at least be able to communicate and work together. Whereas regular society, if you don't like somebody, you just stay away from them, and that doesn't seem to help because, well, look at American society. It's only getting worse with how much people can't talk, they can't communicate, they can't get along.
It's funny. So from like the outside looking in, let's say somebody that's not in the military, they would think that the military is not like a diverse place. But from two people that are in the military and people in the comments that have been in the military is very diverse. There is people from all walks of life, all different colors of skin, and they all work together amazingly.
Yep.
You would never have guessed. Like you're like, oh wow. We in the Army, anyways, we were like, everybody's green. There is no skin color. Everybody's green. And if they went into the military and they had some sort of
that's outdated now, bro. You're not supposed to say
we're old.
Green.
Yeah. But like, let's say you came into the basic training, right? And you didn't normally grow up around a different colored person or what have you. And then you're like, oh, I don't know what this is supposed to be like. And then all of a sudden you go through training with these people and you're like, oh, okay, you're cool. And then your old perception that you had is now erased and you have this new one. And that's pretty much what develops throughout your time in the military is you get this unity, the camaraderie that Alex is talking about from serving. And it doesn't matter, male, female, black, white, yellow, whatever different color there are. But most of your greatest friends, just like Wampa's saying, come from the military. So it's a great place in that regard.
That's that General Milley video I was telling you about, defending the teaching of critical race theory. So the military is already diverse. We already learned how to work together. And now a lot of people don't like the fact that it's being shoved down your throat from a lot of different, I guess, areas, diversity, equity, inclusion, pronouns, the military standing down for what was perceived as like extremism within the ranks, which I think was like after January 6th. Pretty much they were talking about conservatives, and it wasn't received well by the military. So, you have all this stuff, right? You got wokeism, you got the mandatory COVID vaccines, you got the deployment tempos. And speaking of deployment, you've got the way that everything was handled with the Afghanistan withdrawal. And that, I think that single-handedly is going to be the biggest thing that affects the next 10 years of people joining, because the way that we pulled out, you left almost 10,000 Americans behind in Afghanistan. And, thank God you had people like Tim Kennedy. There were contractors. He's in the military, but he went over as an independent contractor. They flew out, I think, a couple thousand Americans by private plane out of Afghanistan. And then you had, I don't know if you guys are aware of who he is, but Lieutenant Colonel Scheller from the Marine Corps publicly took a stand while he was serving and said he wanted accountability from the top people of why these things happen. Why servicemen and women died, why we left Americans behind. And he wanted accountability from the top brass. And the only thing that happened was he was disciplined and kicked out. And nobody at the top actually had any kind of disciplinary action for the loss of lives, giving up. I don't know. I've seen estimates between like $10 billion and $85 billion of American equipment for guns and aircraft and anti-aircraft missiles and all that stuff.
All that stuff. Yeah.
And so with all that, you look at that, and most veterans are going to have a huge problem with it, because not only did they pull out and leave Americans and leave all this equipment, the whole perception of we're going to fight them over there so we don't have to fight them here. That's what we were sold on since 9/11, is like, yes, join, be patriotic, serve your country. I volunteered to go to Iraq because of that. Like, I thought, oh, if I fight them over there, then you keep people safe here at home. But then here we are importing, I think it's like almost 80,000 Afghan refugees with no vetting, no background checks, none of that stuff. So you have all these men and women who've served over the last 2 decades. Look at that, and the whole way that things are pulled out and the withdrawal, and they look at it and think, well, what was the point of any of this? Why did so many people die for essentially nothing? And then you arm the Taliban on the way out. Like, what? And so I think that's, go ahead.
I think a lot of the problem that, most of the servicemen and women had that, our vets, was not the fact that we left Afghanistan, because the longest war in U.S. history was the Iraq.
Yeah, we didn't want to be there.
Right. We didn't want to be there either. The problem that people have is how it was done. They shouldn't have left all of that stuff. They should have planned for it better. If the Afghans needed someplace to go due to like the environment in their country, I mean, that's understandable, but there should have been a process for vetting and all this and that. Luckily, we haven't seen too much backlash from it, but I mean, it could have been different. So, that's coming from 2 people that have deployed. So we've both been in the combats.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So I think, with all that being said, right, I think it's a recruiting problem, but it's also a problem with our senior leaders and their inability to do what seems like the right thing and own everything that's within their command, right? And instead of having this extreme ownership, which is what you would expect from the military and generals and commanders, they historically, not just with Colonel Scheller, right, questioning them, But just historically, it's the low level people that get punished, and the people at the top that make these decisions just skate by free. And so you'd have to be naive to think that people don't see that. People that you want to recruit are seeing all these things unfold, and or their parents have seen them unfold, and all these different missteps by the military. And the military can try to put their spin on things, the media can put their spin on it and try to give it a positive thing, or a positive outlook. And I mean, even as recruiters, we try to be honest and upfront with people, but also like, hey, you're probably going to get deployed, and if you do, there's different kinds of deployments, and not all of them are combat. Like when I went to Iraq in 04, 05, that is a very different combat than people have seen in at least a decade, right?
Right. Yeah. The rules of engagement were a lot different back then.
A lot different. Yeah. And I was on a tank. I don't know many people that have been on tanks in combat and had to use the main gun. But ultimately, I think what it comes down to is like senior leaders in the military have demonstrated that you can't trust what they say. You have to see and judge them by their actions. And that's just the military as a whole. And there's all kinds of problems that we just addressed. And, I think that the biggest thing is that people aren't trusting institutions in America right now, right? A lot of people don't trust the media or the government or the military because they do put a spin on things, or different corporations because they censor things, or censorship in America is a big deal right now in cancel culture and all that. So they trust individuals. They're going to trust people like them, people that they know. And you're going to see that trickle down effect of all these missteps over the last 2 decades, but especially the last couple of years, catching up to them. And I think we're seeing that play out in real time of you can't just hope to fix this overnight. It's a big problem. It's not going to go away with, kicking people out for not getting mandatory vaccines, to the way we went through in Afghanistan, to all the other stuff that we've talked about. I think that knowing the fact that people trust other people, right? If you're gonna buy something, you're gonna trust another person that know's opinion about whatever that product is a lot more than some marketer or advertiser, right? That you don't know. That's their job, is to try and sell you on that product. But if I go to ask Philip, like, hey dude, have you ever have you ever bought running shoes from this company? Are they good or bad? Right? He'd be like, oh, well, they suck. Don't buy them. Probably not going to buy them. Whereas if I saw some really good ad online, I'm like, ooh, yeah, those shoes look real good. I might buy it, but I'm probably going to try and find somebody else that, has worn those shoes or used whatever product it is, driven that kind of car, whatever have you. You trust other people's opinions, especially people over institutions or companies. And the military's at a huge disadvantage right now because, like we said earlier, 80% of people who serve, either are related to somebody who served or they know somebody who served. And if you have all those people that are saying, yeah, bro, don't do it, not a good idea because X, Y, and Z, well, here we are.
Yeah, here we are. I mean, and it still doesn't mean that we don't love the time that we served. There was a lot that we gained from it, a lot that we benefited from it. And
I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't.
That's what I was going to say. We wouldn't be who we are today if it wasn't for the time that we had spent in the military and the things that we had done. And even the experiences, good, bad, and indifferent, those are all things that have helped shape us and form us into who we are as men today. And we wouldn't trade any of those experiences for anything because they are important. And it's good to be able to see the good and the bad and the indifferent, because you have to be able to identify all of these different things within an organization. Because even in the military, yes, you're going to have these things, but you can have these in any other organization that you work in or a company that you work in. Anywhere in life, these are all, things that you can experience and deal with. So being able to identify those and know how to handle them is super important, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't change a thing, man. I really enjoyed my military career. I've met lots of good people, developed in crazy ways that I've never thought possible. But like I said at the beginning of this, I've never lied to people about what it is, what it's like in the military. That's what made us good recruiters. That's why our recruits never dipped out before basic training. We had a lot of other recruiters have recruits quit before they even ship off. Never had one person not go. And that's because we set them up for success and gave them the real spiel of what it's like being in the military and different challenges and obstacles you might face, but also like all the different benefits that, if you take advantage of what the military has to offer, can substantially make your life better. But at the end of the day, it all really boils down to like, are you willing to possibly go through all this stuff in order to achieve that? And everybody's answer is different, right? And the military is definitely not for everybody. And I'm 1,000% against everybody having some kind of mandatory service in the military, especially because the military culture, while it might be changing, I think it is still different enough from regular culture that it has its own uniqueness to it and its own special culture that in regular life probably would offend a lot of people, because we have our own humor, our own inside jokes, our own way of dealing with all the crappy situations that go on. And I would hate to see it become so watered down and bland that it's no longer what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you still decide to join the military, if that's something that you're considering and something you're thinking about doing, is it going to be worth it? Is it something that you should do? That's obviously going to depend on you and your situation. And, like I was saying yesterday, or excuse me, the day before yesterday, because we missed yesterday, just be intentional with the reasons why you serve. That's probably the biggest and most, impactful thing that we can recommend to you guys, is just be intentional. If you're joining for a certain reason, make sure that you keep that in front of you. And there are still good people in the military, great leaders, great things you can learn, great things you can learn about yourself. I still have a lot of Army dads. I still talk to them. Alex still talks to them. I still talk to a lot of my recruits. I still check in on them, make sure that they're having a decent experience, see if they need any advice on anything, and help them get to that next step in their life, because the military is a family. It's a big family. And even though you might hate some of them, you'd still fight for a lot of them, maybe all of them, even if you don't like them that day or that evening. So they do the same for you.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, this has probably been one of our longest live streams. Hopefully you guys found the information in this video today useful. And if you guys have any questions, again, about anything, make sure you guys drop those in the comments. If you guys watching this in the replay, let us know if you guys watching it in the replay. And then we will be back we will not be back tomorrow because it's Saturday. We will be back Monday. What time are we on Monday, Alex?
I believe Monday is at 1:00.
Yeah. Yeah. If you guys like this 1:00 time, let us know. If you think we should push it out a little bit later in the day or a little bit earlier, let us know, because we're trying to kind of figure out what a good time is for these. And then if you guys have any comments on those videos for us, the events are on our YouTube and on Facebook. So go ahead and leave some comments in there, and we will see those when we go into the studios for those events, and we will address those during that live stream. But
and if you guys have served, drop a comment below if we didn't list off one of the reasons that you think people are either getting out or not coming in, because there's a lot of different experiences out there, and I'd love to hear what your experience is or was.
Absolutely. Well, it was fun. We'll see you guys again next week. Take care.
Have a good weekend.